Welcome to Home Gym History. My name is Rob, and you may find me at Vintage Weights PGH, but you'll also find me right here on the Garage Gym Radio Network. So big thanks to Garage Gym Experiment and the Garage Gym Radio Network that produces Home Gym History. This episode is with Grant from the Strength Co. Welcome, Grant.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I feel like it's been snowballing. It's been kind of like building up to having you on the podcast because I've had CT Fletcher on, and then I did like an episode with one of CT Fletcher's inspirations, Craig Monson, recently. So I'm in this whole like kind of CT Fletcher universe on the podcast for several episodes. And there's been some big news recently, listeners. If you're unaware, the Strength Co. is a modern weight company that produces high quality weights right here in the United States of America. And they have partnered up with CT Fletcher to possibly produce some pig iron. And I talked a lot with CT Fletcher about pig iron when he was on the show. So that's the primary topic of this episode. But of course, Grant is no stranger to the lifting world, and I'm sure we'll go off on some tangents and talk about some good stuff in strength sports. So Grant,
yeah, although I must say I'm surprised that you said it's snowballing because you had CT Fletcher type people on the podcast and then you thought of me. I never thought those two things would go together, but I'm not upset that they have.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's gonna right out of the gate. I've kind of dropped some little biographical things about you with Strength Co. And that's your company. That's what you produce here in the United States. But where's CT Fletcher come into the mix? How'd you connect with him? What happened there?
Yeah. So, I think like anyone that started weightlifting in the, early to mid 2000s and, was on YouTube early on, you followed CT Fletcher. So, and the Marine Corps, I remember we used to watch that all the time. And so I've always kind of been a fan. And then I saw TD Smash, Thomas Davis, went out and did a video with him and Larry Wheels and Julius and all those guys. And I just said, hey, CT's gym is right by our California warehouse. I was like, I would love to take him some plates and get some plates in Iron Addicts. I just think that'd be cool. Whatever. And TD's like, yeah, I'll mention it to him. And I don't know, 2 hours later, I got a text from CT. And he's like, call me. I want to talk about something else. And
all in capital letters.
All in caps, yeah. So I called him. And that's when we talked about the plates. He said, he'd be honored to have him in the gym, and that would be great. And so I think we got something like 900 to 1,000 pounds in there, and which is cool. And then we started the discussion of pig iron.
Yeah, man. So listeners, if you don't know, pig iron refers to, it's a nickname for basically old school 1-inch standard, as they're called, 1-inch standard weight plates. So in like the vintage weights community, we would just call them standard weight plates. It gets confusing. I have an earlier Home Gym History episode. It's like episode 2. Very early episode of Home Gym History where we kind of get into why that is and all the differences. But that's pig iron for you, would be standard weight plates. And CT Fletcher, he loves it.
He loves it. And it took me a while to get to that point. So he, not that I'm a foundry expert, but in foundry speak, when you say pig iron, you're talking like ore from the ground being converted to iron versus grabbing old alternators and brake rotors and melting them down, right? And so he kept saying pig iron, pig iron, pig iron. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah. And for 15 minutes, we were talking about two different things. And then I said, oh, do you mean standard plates? He said, pig iron, to be the strongest, in the pig pen or whatever. I was like,
exactly.
So it finally clicked. But yeah, then he said he'd been trying to have it made overseas, some years back, always tried it and it always kind of fell through. And he wanted to know if we'd be interested. I mean, I'm always interested in that stuff. And I said, of course I'm interested. And then I think I woke up the next morning and he posted, we're making pig iron. And I was like, whoa, there's a lot of pressure. I got to figure this out quick. But I like the enthusiasm and the can-do attitude.
I love that part of this story because it's 100% CT. Like that's
this is happening. I'm like, all right.
Yeah. I saw that post. That's how I learned about it. I saw that post and I was like, oh, like, look at this. And yeah, then I started asking you and you were like, well, yeah, we spoke.
Well, and I don't say that like we do. I mean, I did tell him like it's definitely doable. The question is, on the pricing and stuff, but maybe I'll give you a little bit where we are right now and then we can talk about it more.
Absolutely. Yeah, please do.
So I reached out to you. You sent me some of these, great old school guys here. These are your Hollywood, your Heathway, and I got a Weeder one over
Healthway.
here.
Yeah,
Healthway. Sorry, and so started looking at those and trying to figure out what made sense, and then sent up some drawings over to Wapaka, who we use right now for our 2-inch plates, and.
Okay.
And say, hey, draw this thing up. And they had a lot of questions as to what it would, if I wanted to machine it and all those different things. So like on a plate like this, it's cast. It comes out of a sand casting and then it's grinded, right? So it just hits a flush grind. There's spots on the casting where it breaks free of the mold and you grind those off. And then so a lot of plates you'll see on the market they just stop there. Like this Weeder, this is just a flush grind. It's not perfectly smooth and symmetrical, and it's done. For these, we then take to a machine shop. So, and I think what people think sometimes is they forget the logistics that are involved, right? So we use this foundry in Wapaka, but the machine shop is, a few hours away in Slinger. And so then, you have to box it there. You have to get it there. You have to cover it in a solvent so it doesn't rust. Because if it rusts, you're going to have issues when you machine it and then later when you E-coat it. And so there's a whole logistical part to get it there and have that happen.
And I was just going to say, that's only like step 2, because then you're taking it to get E-coated.
Right, exactly. And so so there's a lot of processes. So when it came to pig iron, and CT, saying he wanted it, raw and as cheap as possible. I was like, well, that's going to be interesting. But I like the idea of a budget line, so to speak, right? I think people would appreciate that. So anyway, so I started drawing some stuff up. And
real quick, could I, would you mind? This is a good point to inject a little bit of historical context here to pig iron and standard plates, and then we'll jump right back in where you left off. So basically, back in the day, back in the 50s, 60s, there were plenty of United States companies with foundries right here in the United States producing standard plates. And that was the go-to home gym plate for sure. And if you even look at the advertising in old Strength and Health magazines and Ironman magazines, I mean, there are 2-inch plates that start emerging, but for the most part, all those packaged plate deals from York were, standard 1-inch plates. And these were made in the United States. But then in the boom of weightlifting in the early 70s, throughout the entire 70s, I should say, now we get a lot of overseas production. With that, quality goes down, but so does price. And then that's where a whole lot of things come into play. So now you can get Olympic weights a lot cheaper. That in turn drives on the used market, even made in the United States, standard plates to be a lot cheaper. And then the standard plates coming over from overseas really aren't the best quality. So that's why sometimes I tell people, hey, if you're shopping on the used market, get some vintage standard plates that are good quality, made in the United States, fairly accurate, rather than buying brand new standard weights that are a piece of crap. And so that's where pig iron comes in, that, like you said, CT, in the pig pen, it was an affordable, cheap, way to build a home gym, basically, and in their backyard sometimes. Both Craig Munson and CT Fletcher talked about lifting in the backyard, and that was the pig pen.
I mean,
so
I think
that's where it comes in as a budget line, put it that way.
Right. And I think everyone I've talked to about this, even the guys at the foundry and machine shops, they're like, oh, yeah, I think my dad has that exact set. I've tweeted about it and people are like, I have some of that in my garage. Yeah. And so, but yeah, that's the interesting part with it, right? So when we made the Olympic plates, we make bars as well, but everyone has an Olympic bar. So your sales market is huge because you're making a 2-inch product, which is widely available. And that's the nut we can get into a little bit is, I mean, where do you find a 1-inch bar? Now I know there's some on Amazon, right? Like I know there are some, but it's not
cheap, made
Yeah.
overseas, the
Sure.
chrome that's going to flake off in like a year. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's just not as ready as available,
Mhm.
along with the collars and the whole process. But any event where we're kind of at now is, we got some pricing back from Wapaka, and
Okay.
it's not awesome. I mean, it's in terms of if you want a budget product on the end.
Yeah.
So we're looking at
Yeah.
some ways to try and keep the cost down. Maybe you don't machine it, you just flush grind the inside hole, so it's going to have some draft there, which will give it a little bit of a wobble, but it eliminates a step. It eliminates another person that has to touch it. There's a paint process called electrostatic wet paint, because CT does want them to be black. And electrostatic wet paint the paint's still charged like in an e-coat, except it's sprayed and it just dries. There's no drying process. There's no like bath process. So it's a little bit more economical. So we're looking into that. And then I just said, hey, maybe it's time to get some other quotes from other folks. So I just got some numbers in today about an hour before from a foundry in Commerce, California. And looks like, their tooling prices are better. I haven't been able to crunch the numbers on the piece prices. And then you have to say, okay, is there coders nearby? But in general, I mean, and I'm hoping that, this podcast and other ones help. I really want to do the project, but it's got to make sense, right? And there has to be a market of buyers.
Well, that's the interesting thing to explore is just, who's the market for this beyond just fans of CT Fletcher that are going to buy a pair to just kind of have in their gym. Who's the functional market for this? And I have my opinions, but I mean, you're my guest. I want to hear yours. So who are you thinking would be a prime market?
So I'd love to hear yours too, but I think all the time of, I guess, if I spent a lot of time in this office working and, I'm like, man, if I had like a little like weight set over there that I could go over and like, pump some curls during the day or whatever, like I probably would. I don't want a 7'2" bar in here, but I might do something like that, but I don't know. I think there is a group of people out there, and I'll like your opinion on this, that thinks, hey, I need weights. And they don't think a very specific thing. For me, being in the barbell coaching world, I think you need to squat, bench, press, and deadlift. I need a rack. I need safeties. I need this stuff. But I think there's people that just think like, oh, I need weights. I need to, build some muscle. And they go to, Sears or, Dick's Sporting Goods or, Play It Again Sports or whatever. And they buy, some type of set. But I think that only works for that crowd if the price is actually really low, right? It makes sense that person's not going to go buy my $1,000 set because they don't even know if they're going to use it. But if there's a, I don't know, $200 set, are they? I mean, I'm not sure. I think I have an idea of how to make this work. But first, I'd love to hear from you who you think the market is for this besides enthusiasts.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple, and you just hit on one. One is a starter set. Because I think that's really, I mean, that's exactly what my first weight set was. It was standard plates. And it was, just this hodgepodge of like, I was getting stronger. So then I go back to the store and I get a couple more. And I remember carrying I saved up my money to buy a pair of 50 pounders. And I had to I had parked. I didn't think through this plan. I was only 16, and I had parked way far away. And I'm trying to haul 100 pounds of weights through the parking lot. I'm taking breaks and catching my breath. And clearly I needed to work out more. So yeah, those got left in my mother's house when she sold the house because I had moved on in life or whatever. And I kind of wish I hadn't. But that, it was a starter set. It was the thing that I started out with. And then when I got back into home gym scene and was buying some cheap weights, I bought some standard plates because it was just an easy way to acquire a lot of weight. So I could, and it's what I deadlifted on for quite a while until I got more Olympic weights because I was like, oh my God, I can get 300 pounds of 50-pound pig iron plates for nothing, for a quarter a pound on the used market at the time. Now, this was a while ago. Now, in my area, standard plates are probably 50, 75 cents a pound. So yeah, that's the one crowd I think is starter set, like you just said. The other crowd I think is as a complement to what they have in their gym, because I enjoy having my Olympic plates. They're the ones near my rack that I use for the bigger lifts and things like that. But then my standard easy curl bar is like a go-to. And I even have a standard version of the Criterion that I love. And my standard plates over in the other side of my gym, it's kind of like that station, if you will. And I have a tricep bar and, I have some adjustable dumbbells. And then what you said about your office, at my work, I keep like adjustable dumbbells like I had when I was a kid with about, 60 pounds of standard plates just sitting there so that on a lunch break or whatever, if I feel like doing something, I can just slap together some dumbbells and do it. So
Sure.
That's where I think, the versatility with the budget friendly nature of it would lend to it. So then it begs the question, well, why spend a little bit more on Strength Co. CT Fletcher standard plates when I can go to like a big box store and just get something made overseas that, is there? And off the top of my head, I would hope, and you can verify if this is going to be priority, I would hope accuracy and just overall quality in terms of, like you were mentioning, like, casting flaws and stuff like that.
Oops, sorry. I think so. Accuracy is important to me. That was funny when, I went to CT's house and we're in his backyard. Accuracy is not important to him. He even said,
No.
doesn't matter what it weighs. It matters who can lift it as the most or as many times as whatever. And I was like, well, This is like the complete opposite of everything. But no, I think it would be. And that is one of the things when you're dealing with, a U.S. foundry is you're talking to. I mean, we get approached daily by overseas manufacturers, from China, different places, India, they want to make bumpers for you or whatever. And even if you entertain those, it's just hard, for language barrier and just the barrier of who you're talking to in terms of they're just trying to make something and sell it, right? Versus, a quality or the back end, like in the foundry, these guys, hey, how do you want it to be? What does it need to weigh? They want to make sure that they're doing those things for you. So I think the quality would be higher. I think it would be more accurate, hopefully a better coating. It reminds me a little bit of like records. So not because it's just another disc with a hole in the middle, but I liked records growing up. Before they became cool again, I always listened to my grandpa's records. And I don't know, when I was 16, I got, my own player. And it was fun to me to go to record shops or yard sales and buy, Fleetwood Mac for 99 cents or whatever. And I remember, I had all these records and I moved in with a Marine buddy, 15 years later. And he's like, you don't have any new records? And I'm like, well, they don't make records anymore. It's like CDs or, and he goes, oh yeah, they do. And then he introduced me to this whole world of like, oh, you like the White Stripes? Like Jack White's got records. All these people have records. And so for me, I was like, well, this is cool. I have like all these like old school records over here. And then I have like my new ones over here. But I think I'm like the minority in that demographic, right? That likes both of those worlds. Well,
you're talking to a guy. My only other hobby is that I collect records. So
there you go.
I'm right on with you there.
Right. So, but it's way more fun when you go. I took my wife recently, the first time she's never been in a record shop, and we were eating somewhere. There was a used record shop. I said, "Oh, let's go in here," and I couldn't get her out of there. And when she finds like a Selena record and it's like $4, she's like, whoa, what a deal. And and that's the same thing I think you get with the vintage weights or the old standard weights is, it's the hunt that is part of the fun. So I think you got to try to appeal to both crowds. The main way I want to try to make this work, or another way to think about it, is multiple use of the casting itself. So, I think we can do a 1-inch thing. Now that comes up with its own problems. We got to figure out the bars. We got to figure out clamps, whatever. Cause I don't think it's going to work if CT Fletcher fans or Strength Co fans land on the site. They see this cool pig iron plate and then they say, well, how do I get the bar for it? Yeah. And you drop them an Amazon link. Right. So So that becomes a whole other thing. Where are you going to make that? Are you going to coat that? Are you going to knurl that? I want to love your opinion on that side of stuff and all that. But where I think it could be cool is the pro style dumbbells.
That's on my list of questions in terms of versatility. Do you have any ideas of maybe going pro style dumbbell? So,
Yeah. So
And for listeners that don't know, pro style dumbbell is basically standard plates that are grouped together, and then usually a semi-permanent, if not permanent, cap on the end. The better quality ones over the years have had a recessed cap that was put on them. Like Sornex did that way long ago. Avancos, theirs are like that. That way you're not cracking a like a protruding portion on your leg as you're using these things. And they hold their value fairly well. And they're in a lot of big time gyms because you can make really heavy ones too. You can have, a 200-pound pro style dumbbell just by doubling the plates and the length of the bar.
And I think part of it too, that's sounds funny, but it's true, is they look a little bit cooler. Right.
They do look cool.
And it has that, rather than the urethane covered hex, blob, it has that plate kind of look to it. So that's the question then is, okay, so if I'm casting these plates, whether in Wisconsin or California or Pennsylvania or wherever, okay, now where's that bar who's going to source that bar? Are we going to weld the ends? Are we going to, do a recessed cap like you said? But I think that market is there. People want dumbbells. So then it's like, okay, is this actually a dumbbell project? And then throughout the manufacturing process, you're setting aside, some of your inventory to try and sell as standalones.
I lost you for just a second there, but I think I got the gist of it. That basically it's a nice subsidiary, or maybe is this actually like a main driver?
Right. That's what I was getting at, is maybe the dumbbell's the project, and then you sell the standalone 1-inchers.
Because your company as it stands doesn't have a dumbbell, right?
We have
now, correct?
We have a loadable dumbbell that we make.
Okay.
And it's a handle, right? That sells pretty good. But I will even tell you, when I do this weekend, I was at my Marine base and my master gunner, he's like, hey, you want to go blast arms? I'm like, sure. And so he had every minute on the minute, 5 different exercises, 10 to 12 reps, whatever. And we're going through, and I'm like, this wouldn't even work. And we had a great time doing it. But I was like, this wouldn't even work with my handles. It's like, grab the 20s for this, grab the 40s for this. And there's something about finishing and just dropping it. It's like fun. And
I had handles when I had like a studio apartment. And that, because that's all I could fit in there. And it was a 1-room apartment. So, I mean, so it really depends on your budget, and it depends on, what you want out of it. But right now, one of the things I feel so blessed to have is my full dumbbell, set. Or actually, I switched over from roundhead, so I'm still collecting the globes, but I'm getting there. My 80% full dumbbell set, because like you said, it's just, I mean, you feel like a lucky man being able to just grab whatever you need and do what you want to do. So,
right. I mean, it's easier to handle, and it's less cumbersome. There's no clips involved. You just, you just grab and go.
Absolutely. So that would bring, from your angle, a better, I don't even know the phrase for it, but just a better reliability to this venture. But from the consumer, I mean, off the top of my head, I don't know a lot of go-to currently produced, like you want to go buy them, pro style dumbbells that are at a decent price point. I mean, you're getting up into some pretty expensive things. And I also think a lot of that would come down to if you're selling by the pair, by the set, things of that nature. And what does the set look like? Are you doing like a, 10 to 50, or is it a 10 to 100, or what, what are you doing with that?
Well, and
there's a lot of
that's the other tricky. That's the other tricky part with it is, so let's say you make 10s, 5s, 2.5s, because that's another thing I've thought. Like, hey, let's get it off the ground. Maybe we don't make 25s yet. Make the small ones so you can make dumbbells and see what happens. But you got a 10.5 and a 2.5. So what is that? 17.5 pounds each side, 20, 35 pounds. So, but then you got to make sure that apparatus that's going to hold them together, whatever the cap is, whether you're going to weld it. No one wants to grab a 37.5 pound dumbbell. Right? Yeah. They wanted to say 35, 4. It's just the nature of it. And so I think you then have to figure out that of how to make that, make the math work out so that the product, makes nice incremental sense.
And I mean, as far as knurled, not knurled. You know, I personally like that my dumbbell handles aren't knurled, my vintage dumbbells that I have. I like that because I'm into grip and I'm competing in grip at this point. And I feel like it really taxes my hands that I got to grab these things harder. But on the other hand, I think I'm in the minority. That's just a loose opinion
Right.
because most people, when I talk with them, they go crazy. I mean, people just love knurling these days. They do. Barbells, dumbbells, you name it. They love knurling. And I'm one of them for different things. Like I just picked up the mod bar from Bear Steel, and I love it for lat pull downs because the knurling is impeccable. It's awesome.
Sure.
So yeah, I think with dumbbells, pro style dumbbells, it would be pretty nice to have a nice knurled handle on a pro style dumbbell. That'd be cool.
I think so too. And that's where it gets back down to though, like, do you machine the plate? Do you not? Because on a pro style dumbbell, I mean, the Ivanko ones come to my head, right? They're like those chrome ones, and it's like shiny, and it's like, well, maybe this works if it's shiny, right? And then it's, well, can I use it for both sides? So that's kind of where we're leaning. And I don't say leaning like for sure doing it, but I mean, hey, if we pursue it kind of down that path, just because if you just look through, internet search queries and all that kind of stuff. I mean, the reason we ended up launching bumpers was because we saw how many people were searching for bumpers on our site. And it's like, well, like people want bumpers. So like, let's give them bumpers. People are also searching for dumbbells. Unfortunately, you know what they're not searching for? Standard plates on our site.
I was going to say pig iron.
Yeah, pig iron, right? Yeah, but maybe we changed the game. But right now, that's not what they're looking for.
Well, there was a, I don't know, off the top of my head, I'd say probably 30, maybe 40 years of bumpers existing, with a metal disc in the middle, old style bumpers before the CrossFit explosion and bumpers becoming like the norm, like give me bumpers or die. So all it takes is one of those cultural shifts to, bring something to prominence. And it's not like people stopped lifting iron. I don't have any modern bumpers anymore because I just like the feel of iron. I just like the clang and the bang of iron in my gym. So, maybe it's one of those things that some of the different possible markets we just spoke about a couple minutes ago, a light goes off, they see it, and they're like, oh man, I can't, because that's another market, by the way, I thought about was just the intro market that like, to your company that I can't quite afford the 2-inch,
right?
Yet, but I really love Strength Co. How many times I hear those crazy guys out in the Dakotas talking about them. Shout out to Massonomics. And
that's right.
I want Strength Co. So I'm going to get the pig iron and save my money for the 2-inch. And then once you get the 2-inch, then you can do what I'm doing right now. Your pig iron can become all your accessory kind of stuff, and your 2-inch can become your main lifts.
Right.
So, it might be an intro to your company. So then when it comes to the manufacturing, I just had Jake from LeMaster Barbell on the last episode of Home Gym History. And he was talking about with making his deep dish plates, how going from one foundry to the next, the big thing that drove the shift really wasn't like, because technically his first plates that he put out were made in Mexico. And now his plates are made in the United States. And he said it really wasn't like a patriotic, like, I'm now shifting to the United States. It was more just the demand. Like I needed more production. I could make a better profit margin by now having that demand to go to this company in the United States. And that was a nice kind of byproduct of it, was that now I am made in the United States completely.
Sure, yeah.
So that drives this kind of wonderment on my part. What kind of like, first order, what kind of numbers do you need to really think about when you're releasing a new product like this?
Yeah. So, I mean, really, it depends how much risk you want to take, so it's like, some of them will have minimum runs, some of these foundries where it'll say, okay, hey, when you turn on 45s, and hook that tooling up and make it, I'm going to make it 600 no matter what, right? Boom. That's where I got to do it. But the pricing's the same in terms of the cost per casting, whether I make 600 or whether I make 2,000. That's just because the way we pour it there, it will pack in the type of conversion iron they call it is. Where some of these other foundries will say, hey, if you make 100, it's this much per casting. If you make 300, it's this much per casting. And so you look at that sort of thing. You say, okay, the tooling cost this just to get in the door. I got to make, I would have to make at least, 100 of each size, but then that piece per price is up. So then you're just saying like, okay, do I think I can sell them? Do I just want to like try to break even here? Do I want to try to lose here? Or am I okay with losing here with the thought of like, hey, let me get the name out here, and go forward. And so that's where, going out to CCT and dropping those YouTubes. And we started, we have some links to capture emails is just to see kind of what the interest is. I mean, I think, you have like a niche market, but you have like the nichest market for this topic, right? Of like, what are the comments to this? Or people are like, yeah, do it. Or like, no way, or, whatever.
Hey, when it comes to strength history podcasts, I'm number one, baby.
That's right. That's right.
So out of a crowd of one, there was a guy doing it. It was really good. So I'm not slighting him. There was a guy who was doing a podcast that actually I listened to way before I did these podcasts. I think it was just called History of Strength. And it was during like COVID shutdown, and he put out like maybe a dozen really good episodes that I was really into. And then I just waited and waited. I'm like, where's the next episode? Like, what's going on? Like, I was into it, and he just never came back. He just drifted off. I don't know. So, hey, it's man,
tough to keep going.
If you're listening to this now, History of Strength podcaster, you got my backing. Please come back. You were awesome. You're welcome on my podcast anytime. So back on topic though. What about something like a pre-order limited release? Like, maybe you run with the dumbbells, but then have you ever done pre-order limited release type stuff?
Yeah, for sure. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking is, in this particular scenario, we don't have to rush into it, right? I think when we launched our line in 20, it was, hey, we need to get to market. We need to get to market right away, to build this thing out. Why you can't buy imports and prove that, we can make it here and make it better. But with this one, we can be more deliberate. So I've even thought through some things like, the company that I won't name out of a city in Ohio every year at the Arnold makes a 45, that has Arnold on it. And I'm like, well, maybe I tell CT, hey, we're sponsoring the Arnold again this year. Come hang out in the booth and let's do, your pig iron bench competition, and let's do a limited release of like, hey, you want pig iron? It's at the Arnold this year.
There it is.
Buy it this weekend. That's it. So I'm all about it. The only person besides you and CT Fletcher that wants to do this more is me. Like, I want to do it. It's just also, unless you and CT Fletcher start throwing money at me.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm the one that's actually got to make sure it works.
Oh, well, that is the downside of being the number one strength history podcast, is that the ad dollars, they just aren't here yet.
Not yet. Just not yet.
We'll get there. I mean, Massonomics was in 200s of episodes. So yeah, we'll get
That's
there.
Right.
We'll get there. Well, I think, that company in Ohio with the Arnold plates, the interesting thing about that was that the day they came out, all over Discord and Reddit and anywhere else that all of us like weightlifting frenzied people like to talk to each other, there was this persistent rumor that there was a limited amount. There was only 500 pairs. Like, you better get in there. Did you get? And people were like fanatically like going crazy, like posting, I got a pair. Oh, I got 2 pairs. And for this little tiny window, which I thought was amazing, there was this after sale market on eBay where, I mean, people were dropping way over market price for retail, I should say, price for them. And then within a day or two, it became clear that was just a rumor, that wasn't the case. And those poor people that bought them, because I mean, they went out of stock, but then they came back in stock, and then they went out of stock, came back in stock as the supply runs went through. And it became clear like, oh yeah, I shouldn't have bought a pair for like $1,000 on eBay. So what it speaks to though, is that having a limited run gives it that like baseball cardish, like limited edition feel as well, that like, ooh, I will buy this because this like 50-pound pig iron set, he's only making 25 of them or whatever. He's only making 100 of them or however many sets it comes out to be. And I can use 50 pounds on a curl bar and on a, dumbbell handles, whatever.
No,
So
people definitely love
yeah,
that. We experienced that with our flag bar, Semper Fi bar,
there
we
you
call
go.
it. And
Yeah,
I wanted to release on Veterans Day. Said 50 only. We made little certificates of authenticity, and I wanted
nice.
to donate to this charity fund. And I thought, well, $100 for every bar that sells, we'll donate. We'll donate. $5,000 seems good. We'll make 50 bars. So we made 50 bars. We hyped it all up. They sold out in a day. And then
It's
people
awesome.
just begged. It was amazing, right? And people begged us to make them
Yeah.
more. And then I'm like, well, am I going to make more? So then we made more. And then it was like, as soon as we made more, I mean, they still sell just fine, but they don't sell 50 in a day, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, now they're just available.
Have you ever, were any of the original 50 ever pissed off? Ever angry at you? Like, wait a minute.
No one ever came back and was upset about
Well,
that. Yeah. Well, and it's like a charity. So like, what
Yeah,
are you going to
that's true.
do? Oh,
Yeah.
you donated to this veterans organization and now you want to donate more? You suck.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I collect this. I know like the collectible nature of weight plates and barbells and dumbbells. I would say off the top of my head that if someone produced a Strength Co bar that had the original certificate as the first 50, that right away gives it value over the rest. So if any of those original 50 were angry, I wouldn't be angry if I were them, because you've got something amazing. It's one of the first 50. Like, that's pretty cool. So, that's what separates the first generation from a second generation when it comes to collecting weights and things. So, yeah, still pretty cool. What's on the horizon? You're looking into different foundries, things of that nature. Would you like anything done in terms of kind of, are you doing anything to get a feel for the market, or would you like to do anything to get a feel for the market? Would you like, for example, maybe Garage Gym Experiment throws a poll out there, something like that?
Yeah, no, I'd love to see that. I'm going to be back in California next month. And so by then I should have kind of like, all the business boring data side of this figured out. And I'll sit down with CT again and, see, and then maybe a little bit more collective joint effort of like, hey, we want to talk about this, as a thing that we may do. And we want the people to go here and sign up. Because, we started at the foundry for our plates in March of 20, and we released them in August. But I opened for pre-sale the last month of June, and the first 44,000 pounds was sold out before we ever had boxed up the first plate.
I think I heard, you've been on several podcasts I've heard you on, but it might have been Massonomics I heard you on, actually, to bring them up again, where you're talking about like the massive debt you had gone into, just kind of trying to get it off the ground, just get it in motion. So, you're in a different place now, I would hope.
For sure.
I'm not an auditor. You don't have to give me your financials, but
sure.
I just mean in general, is the company in a different footing at this point?
For sure. For sure it is. And we're growing, and, we're in a much better position. So, I mean, that's where I think something like this is fun, but it's just, tooling costs on 2-inch plates are, $60,000, $70,000, by the time you run them through. And so while this is a lot cheaper and we're looking at just doing, 4 different sizes, it's not like it's, $2,000, right? It's still a substantial amount of money. The nice thing is the infrastructure set up. We know how to ship now. We know how to we have good shipping rates now. We know how to buy the correct boxes. Now we have 3 warehouses. So now all that's why launching bumpers, we launched it. I was like, why was this kind of almost easy?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, when I started this, I had no idea what I was doing. And now I guess I know a little bit about what I'm doing. So
yeah, you're not a rookie anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, I wouldn't be refinancing my house to start with, pig iron,
You're not betting the farm on this at this point. Yeah.
Right. So, I say that to say, I think November next month, sit down with CT again, go through all this stuff. And then, I'd love Garage Gym Experiment. Anybody that,
well,
wants
listeners,
to talk
please
about it.
drop a comment. If you have questions that we haven't answered, if you have ideas that we haven't explored, and if you have just you want to let Grant know that, hey, I want some pig iron, I want to see CT Fletcher pig iron made in the United States and looking good, then drop a comment and let us know. And as far as the Arnold, that's in March, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Home Gym Con. So Home Gym Con is the last weekend in April, and I see home gym owners as like the historically, like the pig iron owners, and potentially a huge segment of the market for pig iron. And so I think, there's a lot to be done. So who knows if you have something brought to market by then. But if there is something that you can put in a booth at Home Gym Con and have that pig iron out there, that would be a great place for people to see how cool it is and see how they could fit it into their home gyms, and even put some maybe in some of the stations so people can work out with it and see, oh, wait, this is kind of nice, having this over here and doing this. So it's a great time, and I'm glad it's coming back, and I'll be there again doing some podcasts and enjoying it.
That's a great idea. Home of Larry Bird, right? French Lick.
That's right. French Lick.
Yeah.
I learned more. I did my research now. I hadn't seen the HBO show Winning Time before last Home Gym Con. Now I saw the history of French Lick. HBO Winning Time, the story of Bird and magic. It's
amazing, isn't
Larry
it?
Bird background thing in French Lick. It's wild. So please consider that. And as far as the plates are concerned, design, where are you in terms of ideas of the design of them, or is it just the balance of design versus cost that you're still working?
No, I mean, we have it pretty much designed out. I mean, it's going to be kind of similar to this one with, Will it
have that? Excuse me, I hopped off mic there
go
for
ahead.
a sec. Will it have that, the rim that is recessed kind of like an Olympic plate, so that when you grab it, you can get a purchase on it?
Exactly. So it won't be like quite as deep as some others, but it'll have a rim here. This will be lifted, and then it'll say kind of CT Fletcher on the bottom end of the 1-inch hole, and Made in USA up over the top. And then it'll say original pig iron is kind of the name that him and I, we thought we're like, do a genuine pig iron? Do you want standard pig iron? But then people get confused with standard barbell, Yeah. And so even though standard is, I was kind of leaning standard because like that's what it is. But I think we're going to go with original pig iron.
It's sometimes I think an overlooked thing, the feel of a weight plate. And when I do my like vintage weight plate reviews, it's something I always try to talk about is, what's the feel of this weight plate? What makes it good or bad? Is the back edge of it really sharp? Is how do my fingers sit in it? Does the lettering come up too close to the edge so that, now I'm pinching this because the reality is you're going to pick these plates up and put them down a million times. So you should be concerned with what they look like. That's cute. But realistically, what they look like isn't going to play a part if you like the logo or not. What's going to play a part is how they feel when you pick them up, and then how much they weigh, because that's the whole purpose. So in terms of your plates, I really like the 45s. And I know, I've heard you talk on podcasts that there was a bit of inspiration from New York. I've fallen in love with is your 25s, and we're not just blowing rainbows and puppy dogs. I'm speaking the truth here. And the reason why, and the way it connects to the pig iron and the suggestion and kind of biggest thing I would hope for the pig iron in terms of design is that your 25s have a deeper set face than any modern 25s I've dealt with, and a whole lot of vintage 25s that aren't deep dish. And they almost give me like a deep dish vibe in a way. They're so deep set for being a 25 that I love them. I mean, and the thickness too, the way you have it set in there, they're awesome. And people just yesterday, King Kong at my place, I was hosting the grip competition, said the same thing about the 25s.
Yeah. So if you go back, I can't remember which one it was. I think on a few times I've talked about it, but the 45 originally had the similar thickness of the lip. So not the depth, but the face of it. And when it came out, I thought it kind of looked like a clown plate because the symmetry just looked a little bit off for a 45. And so we retooled it. And I'm glad we did. I think the 45 looks pretty classic, but I'm with you. I think that 25 is kind of the best one to handle. And I have pair of the original 45s with that fatter lip. And it's a good grab.
And I mean, I like the 45s, but I guess the 25 snuck up on me, put it that way. I hadn't given too much. A lot of people get attracted to the 45s, but I hadn't given too much thought about the 25s. And then I ended up loving those suckers. So when it comes to the pig iron, a lot of the cheap pig iron that's kind of like floating around now and for decades is just a flat disc, maybe a number stamped into it. And then that's about it. And so then they're just slippery. They suck the handle. It's crappy. You're picking up this like completely flat disc. So that's the one design thing that I think will really make yours stand out is that, and it wouldn't be the only one. There's overseas produced ones that here and there, but it'll signify that it's a better quality standard plate.
Sure.
In my mind, at least, if it has that kind of recessed face so that you can get a purchase on it and get a comfortable feel when you pick it up and when you load it and unload it.
So I'd ask you that though, but with that, you would still want it to be symmetrical on each side, right? So like, this is a flat back, whereas this is the same face. This one,
you could go either direction because when it's symmetrical, when it's double-sided, there's a lot of pig iron that's double-sided. And when it's double-sided, it doesn't have to be as deep on both sides because now you've got your thumb going in, so you've got a better purchase on it. So, if you were going to, on a 25-pound plate, have a half inch just on one side and you had a 1/4 inch on both sides, well, you'd still get a nice purchase on it for a smaller standard plate. Because that's the thing about only having a 1 inch versus a 2 inch center hole is that there's some a lot of variance over the years. Like I showed you these discus kind of shaped ones with like a pointed edge that make them easier to pick up. Those are from Healthways. Or, for example, you might have a double-sided like this Billard, but maybe there's only lettering on one side. So that I'm sure was a economical decision on their part that brought down the cost of the mold. But then in terms of the feel of it, like I was just mentioning, you're pinching in with your thumb and your finger. But then you also have like these fat ones, these stout-looking ones. Like this is a Burr barbell from New Jersey. They were made in New Jersey. And Burr barbell, theirs are this is a 10-pounder, but it's just so thick compared to other 10-pounders because
what's the diameter on that?
It's like really short. It's much smaller. Yeah. Like I can palm it, and I'm not exactly like a Brian Shaw humongous dude to be palming a 10-pound plate. So
and I think
you can play around with all those things,
Sure. And I think that goes back to if you're going the dumbbell route too, right? Because you're going to be putting them together and, maybe you want the logo to show on this side, but then also on the outside. Or maybe you don't because you're going to have some kind of cap that's going to go on the end. There's some considerations.
We're really getting in the weeds here, but listeners, if you're still listening to us talking about weight plates, you're going to love this. So here's one thing that just came to mind. So shout out to, what's his name? Casanova. Casanova on Instagram just picked up really cool pro style dumbbell. There's a Johnny Gibson pro style dumbbell, and he showed it to me because he had heard me talk about the history of Johnny Gibson, and I'm still working on this like biography of Johnny Gibson. He was like a war hero. He's amazing. He's like a Renaissance man. The guy did everything in addition to being a champion bodybuilder and making weight plates. So when he took it apart, I immediately said to him, I'm like, listen, man, that's a single pro style dumbbell. If you take that apart, I would love to like trade you or buy you for a pair of those. Well, when he took it apart, it was only one pair of lettered. All the ones in the middle were the same exact casting, but no lettering. And then I immediately said, oh my gosh, he probably brought down the cost like exponentially by having blanks in the middle and just having the letter ones that say Gibson barbell on the outside. So it's just one little vintage production tip there. Maybe you save a couple bucks. I don't know what in terms of casting, if that would save a couple bucks or not, having blanks on the inside versus stuff on the outside.
Yeah, I think it just depends on the volume you're doing. I think these old guys have been doing so much. It's definitely cheaper if it's blank, but it's also more upfront cost because now you got to have two tools, right? Or you have to have the type of tooling where you like take the insert out that has the letters and you put it with blanks. But yeah, definitely a consideration. So see, that's all the stuff that's fun about this. Well, that was what CT's backyard was just like. I mean, it was insanity. It was just like there was just stuff everywhere, and I'm like, "What's that one? Oh yeah, that one's that. Like, what's this one? Oh yeah." And but again, well, the funny part is like he wants to do it, but then he was like, "Oh yeah, it's weight. That's the whole point. You just lift it." And I was like, "Okay." Well,
probably the last 50 minutes we've been talking, I would wager at least, I don't know, 10 minutes of it you were talking about like E-code and then the special paint process. You were considering all this stuff. CT just wants it to rust. He doesn't care. He's he's raw. Like when exactly raw. Like when I got to know him was over this barbell he wanted me to find. And, I have all these videos on restorations and I asked him, well, here, I'll make a video restoring it and I'll send it to you. And he was like, it looks great. Send it. I was like, CT, you're going to like get tetanus or something. This thing's like flaking rust onto my hands. My hands are orange from picking it up. Like I'm not sending it this bar. He's like, all right, well, don't make it shiny. I'm like, okay. So I was like, all right, I'll keep the patina, but I'm going to take off like the crazy orange bad rust. And he's like, all right.
Don't make it shiny.
Guess where that barbell sat for the past year and a half to 2 years? In his backyard. So
I saw it when I was there.
Yeah, it's 100% rusted.
It's completely rusted. It's completely rusted.
So, anyone who's seen that video of mine might as well have not made that. But the introduction to him was, the price of admission. That was great. So
that's awesome.
I'll take it. So that's where, there's an attitude to pig iron that I think is a sales component that some people in history have cut their teeth, have built their strength on pig iron, on lifting this stuff, So
sure,
it'd be cool to bring some of that. And I think CT Fletcher is just the guy to partner with to bring that attitude, to bring that kind of like just badass toughness to it.
I think that's the balance you're trying to strike, is maintain that whole element of it, the uniqueness, the old school badass, I'm here to lift, but at the same time, quality, it's like, how do you bridge these things two together? And see, and then, we keep saying budget plate at the same time. It's like, if you're doing a collector's item, maybe it's not a budget plate. Maybe it's just not awesome. And there's only these many of them. And those that want it are going to pay for it, or,
you better believe I'll be lining up to get some if that's the case, or otherwise.
Well, you've been so helpful. I might have to send you some just because.
Hey, I'd love it because I'm looking up at my rafters. I have a basement gym, and that's where I hang like all the different standard plates that I've kind of amassed. I keep at least like a pair, and then I have the singles club over here that's just waiting to meet their match. But, as I'm looking up the rafters, man, it'd be nice to have a couple Fletcher plates to pull down and use. But yeah, I hope it comes to fruition. And listeners, like I said, either hit Grant up on Instagram, Strength Go, right? So you can find him there. And then Strength Go, is it just strengthgo.com?
Yeah, the strengthco.com gets you there. The strength.co gets you there. And then maybe I'll shoot you a link maybe for your show notes of if they want to sign up for pig iron, they can go and put their email in. Perfect. And that'd be awesome.
Yeah, perfect. So that's, drop a comment on the show, hit the link in the description to sign up for notifications. That way, you don't miss any developments here. And you better believe I'll be pushing stuff out on my Instagram, Vintage Weights PGH, as well as Home Gym History. So, hey, Grant, thanks so much for coming by.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I'll send you the sketch of or the drawings of them, and that you can use that for one of your polls somewhere of, would awesome. You like to see this made? So I'll shoot that over.
Heck yeah, man. I'd love it. And I'm sure listeners are curious about it. And, I'm sure I'm going to get a message from CT tomorrow.
Yeah. He's going to be like, he's my partner. What's he saying? Maybe we're making it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm doing everything I can, CT. I promise.
And I'm pulling for it. I mean, I'm like a one-stop promotion vehicle for this. So yeah, I'm pulling for it. That's for sure. So hey,
awesome.
Thanks so much for being here. Listeners, do your part. And of course, please subscribe, like, comment, all that happy stuff, because Garage Gym Radio is producing this and I'm grateful to them. This is Rob signing off for Home Gym History.